After the barbecue, my ex-wife handed me a note, and she blushed and said, "This stays between us." 40 feet from her sister's grill, with the paper plates still out and our old beagle asleep in my truck, June pushed a folded square of paper against my chest, so fast I had to catch it. Her face went red all the way to her ears. The exact red it went in a Kroger parking lot in June of 2011, when she was 24 and I was 26, and stupid enough to ask for her number. She looked back at the porch. She looked at me, and she said it low and fast, like a woman who'd rather die than be caught hoping. "This stays between us." Then she went inside and shut the door. "My name's Danny. I'm 40. For 9 years I was the easiest husband in Ohio. Ask anyone at that barbecue. Ask her sister Marguerite, who still invites me every Labor Day, because you don't get divorced from Marguerite. I never fought. I never complained. I never once told my wife no. Whatever you want, honey. I said it at every dinner, every Christmas, every crossroads we ever stood at. And I thought that made me a good man. But I sat in that driveway and unfolded that note, and the ink was wrong, faded, old, soft at the creases, like paper that's been folded and unfolded 100 times in the bottom of a purse. And at the top, in June's handwriting, was a date. August 31st, 2021, the night before she left me. 4 years ago, 4 years to the day. She wrote it. She never gave it to me. She carried it in every bag she's owned since, through the lawyers, through the papers, through 4 years of stiff little texts about the dog, waiting on a man who never came downstairs. But underneath it, in black ink, written that afternoon while I stood at her sister's grill, were 6 new words. 6 words that told me everything I'd gotten wrong about my own marriage. Let me back up 8 hours. You need to see the day. Marguerite called me on Thursday about buns. That's how it always starts. She doesn't say hello. She says, "Danny, the good ones. Not the shiny ones. The ones from the bakery side. I know the ones. You said that last year and you brought the shiny ones. I did not bring the shiny ones last year. But you don't win with Marguerite. You just wait for her to move on. And she does. Always. Like weather." She hung up without saying goodbye. Then she texted me 40 minutes later. "Buns." Then again at 9 that night. "Buns." Here's what she didn't text. "June will be there." She never texts that. She just lets me walk into it. Every single Labor Day. Like a man stepping off a curb he forgot was there. The backyard smelled like lighter fluid and cut grass. 91 degrees, no shade worth having. Kids screaming on a trampoline, and Marguerite's husband Rick delivering a 14-minute lecture about the heat zones of a charcoal grill to a man who had not asked and could not escape. June was at the drink cooler, arguing with her nephew about whether root beer counts as beer. Hair up, the way she does when it's over 80. Green sundress. Which, fine. Dresses persist. Objects keep existing after you move out of the house they lived in. That's not a sign. That's just physics. She saw me and lifted her chin about an inch. That's her wave. She's never waved in her life. "Hey," I said. "Hey, you brought buns." I was told to. Repeatedly. Everybody was told to. "There are 4 bags of buns." She handed me a root beer, without asking if I wanted one, which, after 9 years of marriage, and 4 of whatever this is a kind of language you don't unlearn. Duchess is under the hydrangeas. She's fine. She just doesn't like the kids. She's never liked the kids. She's an intellectual. Duchess is our beagle. Was our beagle. Is our beagle. 12 and a half now. Gray to the eyebrows. Deaf as a brick, and completely at peace with the arrangement. The lawyers never mentioned her, and neither did we. So for 4 years, we've been passing her back and forth on the 1st and 15th, like a joint bank account neither of us wants to close. Think about that a second. We signed papers ending a 9-year marriage, and we could not bring ourselves to divide one elderly dog. We just left one thing open, one tiny door, unlocked. I found her under the hydrangeas and sat down in the grass in my good shorts, and she put her chin on my shoe without opening her eyes. I want to tell you something about the last year of that marriage. There was no screaming. Nothing got thrown. No one cheated. Honestly, it was pleasant. A stranger would have been impressed. I said, "Whatever you want." She said, "No. Whatever you want." We passed the salt. We went to bed. We did that for 21 months, and then on a Tuesday she said, very quietly, I think we've stopped. She was right. We had. Now here's the thing I didn't know that day at the cookout. Here's the thing I would not know for another 8 hours. She had it with her. The whole time. While I sat in the grass with the dog. While Rick talked about heat zones. While I ate a hot dog and made small talk about a man's boat. That piece of paper was 4 feet away. In her bag. On the deck rail. And it had been in a bag like it every day for 4 years. And she was standing there deciding. She had a date in her head that nobody else in that yard knew. Around 2, Marguerite came at me with a bowl of coleslaw and a look I have learned to fear. Have you met Doug? I had not met Doug. I met Doug. Doug is an orthodontist. Doug has excellent posture and a firm handshake, and once, out loud, in front of witnesses, described a vacation as a real reset. Doug is kind to animals. Doug has a boat on Lake Erie. Doug is, by every measurement available to science, a good man. Marguerite has been aiming him at her sister since May. He hovered near June most of the afternoon with the patient. Doomed hope of a man who has been told by somebody's sister that it's fine, just go talk to her. And June was polite to him. Warm, even. Laughed at the boat thing. And I stood by the cooler eating a hot dog I didn't want. Doing the math on my own life, and here's what I came up with. I have no right to an opinion about Doug. I gave up my opinion 4 years ago. I gave it up long before that, actually. That was the whole problem. And I still didn't know it. Around 4, June came back to the hydrangeas with 2 plates and sat down in the grass beside me. Doug watched her walk away from him the way you watch a bus you've decided not to run for. You didn't take slaw, she said, looking at my plate. They put vinegar in it. Everyone puts vinegar in it, Danny. And I've objected every year for 14 years. 13, she said. She didn't look up. You missed one, and there it is. 14 cookouts since 2012, minus Labor Day, 2019. The year we were in Denver. She didn't say Denver. She just let the number sit there in the grass between us and be a number. I couldn't breathe for a second. It's amazing how fast a person can hand you an entire year of your life inside one word. We ate. Duchess snored. Somewhere behind us a child was informed, at volume, that the trampoline was not a swimming pool. Then June said, your shoulders are burning. They're fine. She made an impatient noise, dug in her bag, the bag, pulled out sunscreen, and when I didn't take it fast enough, she just did the back of my neck herself. 2 seconds. Brisk. Impersonal as a nurse. Nobody saw. That's what I remember thinking. Nobody saw, and it wasn't anything, and my ears were ringing like I'd stood too close to a speaker. She handed me the bottle for the rest and looked straight ahead at the trampoline. And I, because I am a coward with a very refined instinct for self-harm, said, Doug seems nice. June went still. She looked at me for about 3 seconds, long enough for my heart to do something stupid. Doug is extremely nice, she said. Doug has a boat. Well, there you go. On Lake Erie. Yeah. That's a lake. She stood up, brushed grass off the green dress. Her voice, when it came, was so flat it scared me. Danny! She looked down at me, sitting in the grass like a kid. Eat your slawless sandwich, and she walked back to the house. I have replayed that 10,000 times since. Here's what I know now that I didn't know then. That was her last test. That was her standing at the edge of the diving board with a 4-year-old piece of paper in her bag, giving me one final chance to say a single true thing out loud. Don't go out on Doug's boat, June. And I said, there you go. There you go. 9 years of marriage, and that's what I've got. She almost didn't hand me the note. She told me later. She stood at the kitchen sink for 20 minutes with her hands shaking, and she almost put it back in the bag, for another 4 years. And the only thing that stopped her was the date on the calendar. People started leaving around 7. In that slow, leaking way people leave a cookout. 40 minutes of goodbyes at the door. I did the rounds. Hugged Marguerite. Got handed leftovers I didn't ask for and couldn't refuse. Then I went for Duchess, because it was the first of the month. Neither of us has ever had to discuss it. June walked out with me. That's normal. She always walks out to hand off the dog. That's the ritual. That's the unlocked door. The light was going gold and long across the driveway. Someone's sprinkler was ticking 2 houses down. The whole street smelled like charcoal and somebody's cut lawn. That specific end of summer smell that makes your chest hurt for no reason you can name. She got Duchess up into the passenger seat, which takes both of us now, because Duchess is 12 and a half and has opinions about being lifted. June scratched her ears. Duchess groaned like an old man in a recliner. Then June straightened up and crossed her arms. It was 90 degrees. She crossed her arms like she was cold. I said, "Well, in the way you do." And June said, "Hang on." Something in her voice changed. It went down half a step. I felt it in my back teeth. She reached into the bag, and I watched her hand come out with a piece of paper folded into quarters. Soft, worn, gray at the creases, the way paper gets when it lives at the bottom of a purse for a long, long time. And she pushed it against my chest so fast I had to catch it. Her face went red, not a little, all the way to her ears. The Kroger parking lot, 2011, 24 years old, red. She glanced back at the porch. Marguerite was standing there with a dish towel, being extremely interested in the dish towel. June looked at me. 2 feet away, her eyes were wet and furious and terrified all at once, and she said it low and fast, like a woman who would rather die than be caught hoping. "This stays between us," and she walked back inside and shut the door. I stood in that driveway holding it. A hot summer evening in Ohio, sprinkler ticking, my dead marriage's dog snoring in my truck, and a piece of paper in my hand. I got in. I didn't start the engine. I sat there with my hands on the wheel for a solid minute, because I've lived long enough to know when I'm standing at the top of a hill. Then I unfolded it. Her handwriting. I'd know it from across a stadium. But the ink was wrong. It was faded. That washed-out ballpoint blue that only comes from years. The creases were furry. The paper had been opened and closed so many times it had gone soft as cloth. And there was a rusty half-moon on the corner, where something in a purse had pressed against it for a long time. This wasn't written today, and in the top right corner, because June dates everything, she dated notes about milk like they were treaties. August 31st, 2021. I want you to understand what happened in my chest. August 31st, 2021 was a Tuesday. It was the last night of my marriage. It was the night I went upstairs early because it was easier than sitting in a room with her, and I lay in the dark and listened to her moving around in the kitchen underneath me for over an hour. I remember that. I remember thinking, she's up late. I remember deciding not to go down. She wasn't cleaning the kitchen, she was writing this. And the next morning, her car was packed and she said, "I think we've stopped." And I said, "God help me." I said, "Whatever you want." I looked down at 4 years of my life, folded into quarters. She wrote it that night. She never gave it to me. She carried it through the lawyers, through the empty apartment, through every clipped little text about vet appointments. Through 4 Labor Days, through Doug. She sat 6 feet under me, while I lay in bed being polite, and she wrote something down, and then she lost her nerve, and then she put it in her purse and carried it for 4 years. My hands were shaking so hard, I had to press the paper flat against the steering wheel. And that's when I saw it. Down at the bottom, underneath the old blue writing, underneath 4 years, there was one more line, black ink, sharp, brand new, written that afternoon, in her sister's kitchen, while I stood in the yard eating a hot dog, and telling her that Doug seemed nice. 6 words. Duchess sighed and dropped her chin onto my leg. The sprinkler ticked. The sun went down behind Marguerite's roofline, and I started to read what my wife wrote the night before she left me. I read the first line, and had to stop. "Danny, I've written this 6 times, and I keep taking out the parts that would embarrass me, so this is what's left." That's my June. 12 years of loving that woman, and she still opens like a door being kicked in. I don't want to go. 4 words. Sitting there in the middle of the page with white space all around them, like she couldn't stand to have anything touch them. I looked up, through the windshield, through the bugs and the dust, at that house. The porch light was on now. Somewhere in there, a woman was standing at a sink, with her hands shaking, and she had been standing at that sink, in one way or another, for 4 years. I don't want to go. I went back down. That's the whole thing. That's all of it. I'm going anyway because you keep saying whatever I want. And I don't know how to say I want you to want something. I want you to say one true thing out loud. I have been sitting in this kitchen for an hour and 10 minutes waiting for you to come down, and I already know you won't, because you're being polite. Because we're so polite now. So, ask me to stay. That's all you have to do. Come downstairs and ask me, and I'll unpack the car, and we'll never speak of it again. I'm going to leave this on the counter. June. An hour and 10 minutes. She timed it. Of course she did. She dated notes about milk. She sat in a kitchen chair, in the dark, at the bottom of the stairs, for an hour and 10 minutes, with her car packed, listening for one man to put his feet on the floor. And I lay up there listening to her. I heard her. That's the part. I heard her down there, and I remember exactly what I thought. I thought, she's up late. And then I thought, if I go down there, we'll have to talk about it. And then I rolled over. That's it. That's the whole hinge of two people's lives. A man rolled over because he didn't want a conversation. I made a sound in that truck I'm not going to describe to you. Duchess lifted her head. She can't hear anymore, but she can feel things through the seat. And she pushed her gray face up under my arm, the way she's done since 2013. And I put my hand on her and made myself keep reading. Because there was more. Down at the bottom. Black ink. Sharp and new. Written maybe 5 hours earlier while I was standing 40 feet away with a paper plate. I never left it on the counter. I lost my nerve. I'm still not going. Ask me. 6 words. I'm still not going. Ask me. I sat in that driveway, and I read those 6 words maybe 40 times, and I'm going to tell you exactly what they did to me. Because it wasn't joy. Not at first. It was terror. Because I'm still not going, is present tense. 4 years later, and the woman was telling me she was still sitting in that kitchen, still at the bottom of those stairs, still waiting. She never left. Not really. She'd been carrying that chair around in her purse. And Doug has a boat. And I said, there you go. You want to know why she divorced me? Everybody always wants a reason. When it happened, people asked, and I didn't have one. So I said we grew apart, and they nodded. Because that's a thing people say, and nobody checks. Here's the truth. It took me 4 years and a piece of paper to find it. I never told her no. Not once. 9 years. That's not an exaggeration, and it's not a figure of speech. I have gone back through it, and I cannot find a single time I said no to that woman. I thought that made me a good husband. I really did. I used to hear guys at work complaining about their wives, and I'd sit there feeling superior. Easygoing Danny. Never fights. Whatever you want, honey. But run it out. Who picked the restaurant? June. Every time. For 9 years. Who picked the house? June. I walked through 4 of them saying, I could see us here, in a voice with nothing in it. And she chose. And then when the basement flooded in 2016 and we lost $11,000, who sat at the kitchen table with her face in her hands? Who said, I picked it, I'm sorry, I picked it? Not me. I was very nice about it. I was so nice about it. Whose mother's for Christmas? June's call. And when her mother said the thing about her weight, and June cried in the car for 20 minutes on the way home, who felt guilty? June. Because June picked. Because I'd said whatever you want. You see it now? Whatever you want isn't generosity. That's the con. Whatever you want means this one's on you. I built a marriage where every single decision belonged to her, and every single consequence belonged to her. And I stood off to the side with my hands in my pockets, being easy to live with. 9 years. She carried the whole house on her back, and I got a reputation as a nice guy, and she got a reputation as the one who always gets her way. Do you understand how cruel that is? I made her the villain of her own marriage by never disagreeing with her. But that's not the worst one. The worst one is a drawer. Year 6. She was 31, I was 33, and it's a Sunday morning in October, and I come into the bathroom, and she's standing at the sink, holding a pregnancy test, still in the box, unopened. We'd been talking about it for 2 years, which meant she brought it up and I said sure, when the timing's right, and then the timing was never right, because timing isn't a thing that happens to you. Timing is a decision. And I never made a decision in my life. She's holding this box, and she's got a look on her face I'd never seen. Naked. Wide open. Scared. And she says, Danny, do you want this? Not should we. Not what do you think. She said, do you want this? She was asking me to want something. One time. out loud. And I said, I can still hear my own voice. It's the most disgusting sound I know. I said, I want what you want. She stood there, maybe 3 seconds. Then she put the box back in the drawer and slid it shut. And she said, okay, and she went downstairs and made eggs. We never talked about it again. Not once. 7 years. She's 38 now. I told myself for years that she decided. That's the architecture of me. Right there. I got to spend 7 years believing she made the call. When what actually happened is I stood in a bathroom and refused to want my own child out loud. And she heard it, and she understood, and she put it in a drawer. She didn't put a pregnancy test in that drawer. She put me in that drawer. She looked at a man who wouldn't say yes to a baby with the woman he loved, and she made a decision about how much of her life she could spend waiting on him to arrive. And then, 10 days later, the Denver offer came. 9 years of whatever you want. 9 years of handing her the wheel. And the very first decision I ever made on my own. The only one. In the whole marriage. I made it without her. I told her at dinner. In the past tense. It just came out that way. I swear to God I didn't plan it. I said, so I took the thing in Denver. Took. Past tense. And I watched her face do this small thing. This tiny collapse. And then reassemble itself in about half a second. The way you'd fold up a letter you weren't supposed to read. And she said, that's great, Danny. She handed me the out. And I took it with both hands. 800 miles away from her sister. Away from her job at the school she'd been at 8 years. Away from everything she was. She never once said no. Because she'd learned. God, she'd learned it from me. She'd been living with a man who taught her by example that in this house, we don't want things out loud. We were there 14 months, October 2018 to December 2019. We missed one cookout. One, the only one in 14 years. And 13 months into it, on some Wednesday in a rented condo, June stopped talking. Not dramatically, she just quieted. Like a radio losing signal. We came home. Something got left in those mountains, and neither of us went back for it. 21 more months of Past the Salt. Then a kitchen chair, and an hour and 10 minutes, and a man who rolled over. I sat in that driveway until it was full dark. And here's what came to me. And I want to be careful with this, because it's the only smart thought I've had in 4 years. She doesn't want an apology. I'd have gotten it wrong. I know exactly what I'd have done. I'd have gone up that walk and knocked and cried and said, I'm so sorry, June. I'm so sorry. I ruined everything. And she would have thrown it in the trash. Because an apology is just one more way of handing her the wheel. I'm sorry means now you decide what to do with me. It's the same con in a black suit. She told me twice, in 2 different decades of ink, exactly what she wanted, and she used the same word both times. Ask me to stay. Ask me. She didn't want sorry. She wanted a man to want something out loud, and take the risk of hearing no. That's it. That's all she ever wanted. For 12 years. And I couldn't do it. And here's the truth I found at the bottom of that hole, sitting in a truck with a deaf dog. I never said what I wanted, because if I never asked, I could never be told no. That's the whole man. That's 40 years. Right there. I was so afraid of hearing no from June that I made sure she never had a question to answer. I let my whole marriage die of a thing that never once happened to me. Coward. That's not self-pity. That's just accurate. I was a coward in the exact shape of a nice guy, which is the hardest kind to spot, because everyone congratulates you for it. So I drove home, and I did not go back in that house. Even though Marguerite was on that porch and I wanted to blow past her and kick the door down. Because June said this stays between us. And I have been a lot of bad things, but I have never once ignored the terms. She'd been carrying a note for 4 years because she couldn't say it out loud either. She's not braver than me. That's what got me. We're the same. 2 people who could only ever tell the truth on paper. So I got a pen. I let Duchess out. She went to the yard, did her business, came back in, and lay down under the kitchen table in the exact spot she's laid in since she was a puppy, and I sat down at that table at 9:15 at night with a legal pad. I'm not a writer. I sell industrial fasteners. It took me an hour and a half. I filled that trash can. I tried clever. I tried funny. I wrote one that was 2 pages long, and I read it back and it was just sorry wearing a costume. And I tore it up so hard I ripped the pad. And then I stopped. I put the pen down and I sat in my kitchen. And I asked myself, honestly, for the first time in my adult life, Danny, what do you want? And I want you to know how hard that was. That question had rust on it. I had to force it open like a window painted shut. But the answer came up so fast it scared me. It had been sitting there the whole time, all 4 years, waiting for somebody to finally ask. I picked up the pen. June, you left it on the counter. It just took the counter 4 years to get to me. You asked me for one true thing out loud. I've never given you one. So here it is, on paper, which we both know is the only way either of us has ever been any good at this. I didn't want Denver. I have never wanted whatever you want. Not once. Not one single time in 9 years. I said it because, if I never asked for anything, I could never be told no. That's it. That's the whole shabby thing. I was so scared of hearing you say no to me that I made sure you never got a question. I let you carry every decision we ever made, and every consequence, and then I let people call you difficult and me easygoing. And I knew, June, part of me knew the whole time. October 2018. You stood in the bathroom with a box in your hand, and you asked me if I wanted it. And I said I want what you want, and you put it in the drawer. I've had 7 years to think of a better answer. Yes, I wanted it. I wanted it so much I couldn't say it, because if I said it out loud, and then it didn't happen, I'd have to survive wanting something. So I let you close the drawer, and I let you think you decided, and that is the worst thing I have ever done to another person. I'm not asking you to forgive that. I'm not asking you for anything you'd have to be nice about. I'm asking you the other thing. Don't go. Stay. Unpack the car. I'm asking June. I'm downstairs. I've been downstairs the whole time. I just never said anything, which, as we've now established, is exactly the same as not being there at all. And if the answer is no, then it's no, and I'll take it standing up, because I've spent 4 years finding out that not asking is worse. Nothing you can say to me tomorrow is worse than that kitchen chair. Dinner. Thursday. That place with the bad slaw. I'll eat the slaw. Danny P.S. Come home. I sat back and looked at that last line, and something went through me like a current. I'd forgotten. That's what kills me. I had forgotten. We were a note-leaving couple. That was our whole language before it all went quiet. A note in my coat pocket that I'd find in a meeting in Cleveland. One taped to the coffee maker. Milk. Also, I love you. Mostly milk. One that was just a drawing of a duck. I still don't know what the duck meant. I don't think she did either. And I signed every single one of mine the same way. Started as a joke about how much I traveled. Stopped being a joke somewhere around year 3. P.S. Come home. I hadn't written it in 6 years. I folded it into quarters, the way she folds them, the way we always did. And I looked at the clock. 9:58 p.m. And that voice started up. The old one. The one that's run my whole life. It's late. She's tired. It's been a long day. Wait till Thursday. Text her first. Feel it out. 40 years of that voice. Duchess groaned under the table. And I thought about a woman sitting in a dark kitchen for an hour and 10 minutes. I put my keys in my pocket. I want to tell you I was brave. I wasn't. I got in that truck at 10 o'clock at night, with a piece of paper in my shirt pocket, and my hands shaking on the wheel, and absolutely no plan whatsoever, except that her coat would be hanging by the door, and that's where our notes went. In the pocket. That's where they'd always gone. That was the entire plan. Put it in her coat, and drive away like a coward with one good deed on his record. 11 minutes across town. Every light green. I remember that. Every single light. I turned onto her street, and the whole block was dark, except her porch. And her coat wasn't inside the house. Her coat was on the porch, and June was in it. She was sitting on the second step with her arms around her knees. 10 o'clock at night, 90 degrees still coming up off the concrete, and my ex-wife was wearing a winter coat over a green sundress. My headlights swung across the yard and caught her, and she didn't move, didn't stand up, didn't shield her eyes, didn't do that thing people do when they're surprised, because she wasn't surprised. She'd been out there waiting. I killed the engine. The quiet came down on that street like a hand. I want you to see it the way I saw it. Because I've had a year to think about that porch, and I still can't get to the bottom of it. Bugs going crazy around the porch light. Sprinkler 2 houses down, still ticking. That smell, charcoal gone cold, cut grass, the last night of summer. And a 38-year-old woman in a wool coat in 90 degrees, hugging her knees on her own front steps in the dark. She'd handed me that note at 7. It was 10. She'd been sitting there for 3 hours. I got out. My legs did not want to work. I walked up that path like a man walking up to the edge of something, and every step I could feel that paper in my shirt pocket over my heart, and the old voice was screaming at me the whole way. Turn around, put it in the mailbox, text her, wait till Thursday, don't make her say it, don't make her say no. 40 years of that voice. I stopped at the bottom of the steps. She looked up at me. She'd been crying. Not right then, earlier. Her face had that scrubbed, wrung-out look, and her eyes were red and her chin was up, because June has never in her life let her chin go down in front of me. Neither of us said anything. And that's when I understood the coat. It wasn't cold out. It wasn't remotely cold out. She put on a coat because when you have handed someone the most naked thing you own, and you're sitting outside in the dark waiting to find out if they're coming, you need something around you. She was holding herself. That's all. She'd been out there for 3 hours holding herself. I got the note out of my pocket. My hands were doing the thing again. I couldn't get it out clean. I fumbled it, and it dropped on the step and I had to pick it up off the concrete. And God, I wish I could tell you I did this smooth. I held it out. And I said, "This stays between us." She looked at it. She didn't take it. 3 seconds. 4. I stood there with my arm out in the dark like an idiot. Then she said, very quietly, "Danny, if this is an apology, I'm going to put it in the trash and go inside, and I'm never going to talk to you again." My whole chest went cold. "I mean it," she said. Her voice cracked right down the middle, and she just kept going through it. "I have had 4 years of you being sorry. I don't want sorry. Sorry is just one more thing for me to carry. You get to say it, and then I have to decide what to do with it. And I am so tired, Danny, I am so tired of deciding." There it was, right there. The whole marriage in 3 sentences, in the dark, on a step. And I thought, thank God I threw those away. Thank God I sat at that table for an hour and a half and tore up every single draft where I was sorry. "It's not an apology," I said. She looked up at me. "Then what is it?" "It's the other thing." June closed her eyes, and she took the note. Now, I have watched that woman read a lot of things over 12 years. Grocery lists, report cards, the letter from my mother's oncologist, but I have never watched anybody read anything like that. She unfolded it under the porch light, both hands. And she started at the top, and I watched her eyes go left, right, and I stood at the bottom of those steps with my hands at my sides and did not say one word. Because for the first time in my life, I understood that this was not my turn to talk. She got about 4 lines in, and her hand came up over her mouth. She got to Denver and made a sound. And then she got to the drawer. She stopped. Her eyes stopped moving. I watched them stop. She was on that word. I know exactly which word. And she just stayed there. Yes, 7 years. 7 years since a Sunday morning in October. Since a box in her hand, and I want what you want, and a drawer sliding shut. And she never brought it up again. Not once, not in the fights, not in the lawyer's office, not in 4 years of texts about the dog. She just took it and put it somewhere inside her, and carried it. And now it was written down, in blue ink, on a legal pad, in her hands. I wanted it. I wanted it so much I couldn't say it. June's shoulders went. She folded forward over that piece of paper like something had let go inside her, and she made a sound I will hear until the day I die. It wasn't crying. It was older than crying. It was the sound of a person setting down something they've been holding up over their head for 7 years. And every single thing in me wanted to go to her. I didn't. I stood there. Because she wasn't done reading, and she had asked me, twice, in 2 different decades, to let her finish. And I had spent 9 years rushing in to smooth things over so nobody would have to feel anything, and I was done doing that. That's what it cost. Nobody tells you that love is sometimes standing still while the person you love falls apart in front of you. She wiped her face with the back of her wrist and made herself keep going. I know the exact moment she hit the last line, because her whole body went stiff. P.S. Come home. She stared at it for a long, long time. Then she said, without looking up, in a voice like a wire pulled tight, "You haven't written that since 2019. I know. You stopped." She was still looking down at the paper. "You stopped." And I didn't say anything. I kept checking my coat pockets, Danny, for months. I'd put my hand in there and there'd be nothing, and I'd think, okay, that's okay. June. I checked them in Denver. Her voice broke. Every day, like a crazy person, and I had to hold on to the railing. Because I remember stopping, that's the thing. I remember exactly when, some Tuesday in Denver, I picked up the pen and thought, this is stupid, we're adults, she's right there, and I didn't write it, and nothing happened. The world didn't end. Nobody said anything. Nobody said anything. That's how it goes. That's exactly how it goes. Nobody ever says anything, and one day there's a woman sitting in a kitchen chair for an hour and 10 minutes, and a man upstairs rolling over. She folded the note, slowly, into quarters, the way we do. Then she stood up, coat and all, and she came down one step, so she was up above me, looking down, and her face was wrecked, and her eyes were absolutely burning. "Ask me," she said. Oh, that woman. She wasn't going to let me have it on paper. She had 4 years of paper in her purse, and she knew exactly what paper is worth. She wanted it in the air, out loud, with my mouth, where it cost something. And the voice came up, one last time, loud. She might say no. She's going to say no. You've got the note. She read it. That's enough. Go home. You did enough. I looked at her. 38 years old, 90 degrees. A wool coat, 3 hours on a step. Don't go, I said. It came out cracked and ugly and about half the volume I meant it to be. Louder, she said. She was crying openly now. Louder, Danny. I sat in that kitchen. Don't go. And it came out of me like something tearing loose. Don't go, June. And stay. I'm asking you. I've always been asking you. I just never opened my mouth. And I know that's the same as never asking. I know that now. I know it cost me everything. My voice went completely to pieces. Stay. Please. That's what I want. You asked me what I want. That's what I want. It's the only thing I've ever wanted, and I was too much of a coward to say it out loud one time in 12 years. The sprinkler ticked. She didn't move. And in that half-second, that 1/2 second of silence, I felt it. The thing I'd spent my entire life avoiding. She might say no. And you know what? It was fine. It was survivable. It was nothing. 12 years I ran from that feeling. I let a marriage die rather than feel it. And it turned out to be a half-second of a hot night in Ohio, and I lived right through it. That's the joke, isn't it? That's the whole joke of my life. The thing I was hiding from was smaller than the hiding. June came down the last step. She stopped right in front of me, close enough that I could smell sunscreen and charcoal and her. And she looked up at me, and her chin was shaking, and she said, in the most ruined voice I have ever heard, "You're not eating the slaw." I laughed. It came out as a sob. Both. Whatever that is. I'm eating the slaw. Danny. She grabbed the front of my shirt with both fists. She was laughing and crying, and she could barely get it out. You'll hate it. You've hated it for 14 years. 13. She hit me. She actually hit me, right in the chest, and it turned into her hanging on to me. June, I said, I'm eating the slaw. And she understood. Of course she understood. We were never talking about coleslaw. We haven't talked about coleslaw since 2012. She had just watched me stand at the bottom of her steps and want something out loud, and now she was pushing on it, testing it, the way you push on a step to see if it holds. You'll hate it, Danny. Back down, say whatever you want. Say it. You always say it. And I didn't back down. That's all she ever wanted. In 12 years. One man, one preference. Held against pushback. For 4 seconds. She put her face in my shoulder, and she came apart. I got my arms around her and that wool coat, and I held on. And she was shaking so hard I could feel it in my knees. And she was saying something into my shirt over and over that I couldn't make out, and then I could. She was saying, "You came, you came, you came." 4 years. She'd carried that piece of paper for 4 years, through a divorce, through an empty apartment, through every Labor Day, through a nice man with a boat on Lake Erie, and every day of it, she'd been sitting at the bottom of those stairs, listening for footsteps. And I'd been upstairs the whole time. Being polite. I don't know how long we stood in that yard. Long enough that my back hurt. Long enough for the sprinkler to finish. And then, because the universe has a sense of humor, Marguerite's porch light came on next door. Neither of us moved. Nobody came out. That's the thing. That light stayed on for a good 10 seconds. Long enough for a woman standing at a dark window to see exactly what she needed to see. And then it went off again. And the door never opened. Marguerite, who invited me every single year for 4 years. Who made me bring buns. Who never once texted June will be there. Who aimed an orthodontist with excellent posture at her sister all summer, and got absolutely nowhere. And I think, never expected to. You don't get divorced from Marguerite. We sat down on the steps. Right there. She kept the coat on and I put my arm around it, and she leaned into me, and neither of us said a word for a long time. Then she said, I almost didn't. I know. No, Danny. She sat up. She needed me to see her face. I stood at the sink for 20 minutes. I had it in my hand, and I was going to put it back in the bag. I was going to put it back in the bag, and go out on Doug's boat, and be fine. She wiped her face. I've been fine for 4 years. I'm very good at fine. What stopped you? She was quiet. Then she said, the date. And that was it. That's the whole thing. Right there. She'd looked at the calendar on her sister's refrigerator that afternoon, between the school photos and the pizza coupons, and she'd seen September 1st, and she'd known. 4 years. To the day. And nobody on this earth knew that but her. Not Marguerite. Not me. She'd carried that anniversary alone for 4 years, the way she carried every single thing in our marriage alone. And she'd stood there at the sink and thought, if it's not today, it's never. That's how close it came. A number on a magnet. You were standing right there, she said, in the yard, eating a hot dog, and I was in the kitchen with a pen, thinking, one more time, and if he doesn't come, I'll know, and I'll go on that boat, and I'll never think about it again. I couldn't breathe. And then you told me Doug seemed nice. She laughed. It was a terrible laugh. You told me Doug seemed nice, Danny. June. I went inside and I wrote it in anger. She held up the note. Do you understand? I'm still not going. Ask me. I wrote that furious. I wanted to hurt you with it. And I looked at that piece of paper, and I finally saw it. 6 words that came out of her sideways, out of rage, at the end of 4 years, and they were still, somehow, the most loving thing anybody's ever done for me. Because she could have said nothing. That's what people do. That's what we'd done for 21 months, and then 4 years. She could have gotten on that boat, and been fine. Instead, she took the one thing she'd been hiding for 4 years, and put it in my hands, and blushed to her ears, and said, this stays between us. That was her walking downstairs. She did the thing I couldn't do. She just did it 4 years late. Same as me. We're the same. June and I. 2 people who could only tell the truth on paper. The difference is, she finally handed the paper over. Hey, I said. June. What? 1 hour and 10 minutes. She went very still. You timed it, I said. And she started to cry again. Quiet. This time, the last of it. And she said, I timed everything. I've always timed everything. I dated notes about milk, Danny. I know. Somebody had to keep track of us. Her voice went to almost nothing. You never did. So I did. For 9 years. And then I did it for 4 more. By myself. In a purse. I want you to sit with that. She kept the record. That was her job in our marriage, and she never applied for it. Every decision, every consequence, every date, every anniversary. She carried the whole thing on her back, and I stood next to her with my hands in my pockets, being easy to live with. And when she finally couldn't carry it anymore, she blamed herself for that too. Give it here, I said. She handed me the 4-year-old note, and I took the pen out of my truck. I still had it. It was on the seat. And I sat on those steps under that bug-filled porch light, and I wrote at the bottom of the page, under her blue ink from 2021. Under her blue ink from that afternoon. 3rd ink, Third writer. 2 words. I'm here. And then, because there's only ever been one way to end them. P.S. Come home. I handed it back. June read it, and she took that piece of paper, that soft, gray, 4-year-old thing, and she folded it into quarters, and she put it back in her coat pocket. She still got it. It's in a box in our closet, and I know exactly where, and neither of us has ever framed it, or laminated it, or made it into a thing. It's just in the box. Because it's not a keepsake. It's a receipt. We didn't get remarried on that porch. I want to be honest with you. There was no ring, no big speech. We were 2 exhausted people on a step at 11 at night with a lot of work ahead of us. We had dinner that Thursday, and I ate the slaw. All of it. Every bite. It was vinegary and awful, and she watched me the entire time with her chin in her hand, and this look on her face like she was watching a man walk on the moon. And when I finished, she said, "Was it terrible?" And I said, "Yes, it was terrible. I never want to eat it again." And June put her hands over her face and laughed until she cried, right there in a restaurant, because in 13 years, I had never once told her that. That's what she'd been starving for. Not roses, not Denver undone, not even the baby. God help us. Just a man who would say yes. It was terrible, instead of whatever you want. It's been 10 months. She's in the house, not the old house, a new one, a small one, that we picked together, and it took 4 months, and we fought about it, and it was the best fight of my life. I said no to 2 of them, out loud. She said, "Say why," and I said why. And we stood in an empty living room in March, arguing about closet space like 2 people who were actually there. She's 38, I'm 40. There are conversations happening now that we didn't have in 2018. Real ones. Out loud, with the drawer open, and some doors don't open again no matter how much you want them to. And we're finding out about that together instead of separately. That's the part I can't fix. That's the part I have to live with. But we're finding out together. She's not deciding it alone in a bathroom while a coward makes eggs downstairs. Duchess is 13. She sleeps under the kitchen table. There's no 1st and 15th anymore. And there are notes again. Coat pockets. The coffee maker. One in my truck last week that said bread. And also I love you. Mostly bread. I found a drawing of a duck on the fridge on Tuesday. I still don't know what the duck means. I don't think she does either. Here's the question I want to leave you with. And I want you to actually sit with it. Because I didn't. For 12 years. And it cost me almost everything. Who in your life do you say, whatever you want, to? And are you saying it because you love them, or because you're afraid to be told no? Because that's the thing nobody warns you about. The cruelest thing you can do to someone who loves you isn't fighting with them. It's never fighting with them. It's handing them every decision and calling it kindness, until they're carrying the whole marriage alone and blaming themselves for the weight. Somebody in your life is sitting in a kitchen chair right now, waiting for footsteps. Go downstairs. And if this story reached you, if you thought of someone while you listened, do me one favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, because if you don't ring it, you won't be told when the next one comes. You'll just assume nothing's there. And that, as June would tell you, is exactly how you lose 9 years.